Welcome to the Surviving Siblings podcast. I'm your host, Maya Roffler. As a surviving sibling myself, I knew that I wanted to share my story, my brother's story. I lost my brother to a homicide in November 2016, and after going through this experience, I knew that I wanted to share my story and his story. And now it's your turn to share your stories.
Today I have Erica Bohn with me. Erica is, of course, a surviving sibling just like us, and she lost her brother TJ over 30 years ago. Erica, welcome to the show.
Hi, Maya. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I really enjoy having siblings on that have some experience in this grief space, right? You have a lot of depth and a lot of just time under your belt in this grief space,
Right.
Erica, to share with us 3 decades because you lost TJ as a child. So before we get into that, though, Erica, tell us a little bit about you and TJ. You've got some interesting family dynamics I'm interested to hear about.
My brother, TJ, and I were both adopted from different biological families. We were both adopted as babies. My adoptive parents could not have children, and he was born in 1977 on June 6th. He was only 8 weeks, or no, he was only 8 days when they adopted him. I was 8 weeks. So he was tiny. We were just a happy family unit, and it was the perfect Midwestern, you know, middle class family until 1995. So
Yeah. And what's the age gap with you and TJ?
he was 4 years older than me.
Okay.
So he actually named me. He wanted to name me Eric, but my mom was like, well, that's a boy's name. So she's like, you have to pick a girl's name. So he named me Eric, but she added the A. So that is how I became Erica.
How cute is that? Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. What was he like as a big brother?
He was hilarious, like, he was one of the funniest people, but he was really hyperactive. He had they called it ADD back then, but he had ADHD, so he was always on the go. He was always on a dirt bike, he was always playing a sport. He was one of the best golfers that any of us ever knew, and we think he probably could have taken that a little bit further had he lived past 18. He was really, really good at golf.
How cool. Do you golf? Are you into golf too, as a side note?
I golf, but I'm not any good.
Oh, okay. Okay, you didn't get that from TJ then,
No,
alright.
no, I'm no good at that.
Wow, very, very cool. And, oh gosh, I know those are the things you think about. It's like, right, if they had just I think about that stuff with my brother too with music, right? I'm like, if he had just well, where would he be now?
I
I'm
know,
sure, right? I'm sure a lot of people
right?
relate to us with that. That's so tough. So were you guys in high school? No, you weren't in high school together. You just missed each other, right? Middle school and high school just missed each other?
I was still in middle school when
Yeah.
he was a junior. He hadn't started his senior year yet. He was just getting ready to start his senior year in high school, and I was getting ready to go into the 8th grade.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's a good big brother, super ADD.
Yeah,
Love that.
yeah,
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about take us back. I mean, 1995. Wow, 30 years. You had a big
yeah.
milestone in 2025. That was big. We're going to get into that in a little bit, but take
Right.
us back to 1995. It was August, I believe, if I remember the date correctly. And
August 4th.
right, well, you'll always remember that date, I'm sure.
Right, right.
Tell us a little bit about what you guys were doing. What was that day like?
So we had family over that day, and he had brought his girlfriend, and they had been together for a little while, and we all really, really liked her. Her name is Tammy, and I still have contact with her today.
Do you
But he had
really? Wow,
Yeah,
30 years. Oh, this is so cool. That's very cool. Okay.
yeah, and I'll talk about that when we talk about the 30 years, but he had brought her over, and we had an above ground pool, so we were all swimming, and he and Tammy were gonna go to a party, so they left, and they had been swimming with us and playing with us, and I had some other cousins in the pool with me, and they left to go to a party in a different town, and when they were leaving, my dad was like, "Hey, come back." And my brother's like, "I won't." I mean, it's just kind of normal for him to say that, for him just to jokingly be like, "Oh, I won't." So that
It was
was
a normal little tag phrase for him to
right.
yeah.
Right. So that was the last time we ever saw him.
Like a you really do paint a perfect image of this, like, Midwestern family. Where were you guys in the Midwest?
We are in Southern Indiana.
Okay, yeah, so, like, I totally get that, like, in the pool, like, family kicking back. I lived in Minnesota for a little while as a kid, so, like, I can totally get the vibe. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So, tell us what happened. I mean, obviously, this is when your brother passed. Tell us all a little bit about what you shared with me about your dad that day. I think this is what's very interesting about your story.
So my dad worked at a factory and he worked third shift, and he worked at a town like the next town north of us, like probably 40 minutes away. And he was at work for third shift. He never missed work ever. So he said he got heartburn really bad that night, and he thought, I have to go home. And he just had a really bad feeling. And on the way home, he actually took a route that he didn't always take. But my dad, my brother, and I were all and still are notorious for taking like different routes to get to like the same place because I guess we get bored. But he took one of the different routes to get home, and he is the one that found him that night. And from what I was told, it had just happened. And I mean, none of us really know exactly what my dad saw, and he never talked about it. But he was the person that found him.
I mean, what blows my mind so much about this part of the story is I just envision your dad, this hardworking dad, third shift, never misses anything. And for some reason, that day, he's like, I gotta leave. I don't feel well. And he drives this particular way and he comes up on your brother's truck, I believe is what you had told me, right? Your brother had a truck. Is that what it
Yeah,
was?
he had a
Yeah.
Chevy Blazer.
Yeah. And he finds your brother. And so he's never really spoken to you about what transpired when he got there, or what do you know about that, Erica?
So my dad's a man of few words. Like he's the normal Midwestern farmer, and he doesn't really talk about his feelings. So he is a man of few words. He I don't know if he's told my mom, but I think with my age, and I mean even now, I'm sure my parents still see me as a 14-year-old. They don't see me as a 44-year-old. But they just kept some of that stuff from me, and some of the things I learned from other people, and I learned some things from TJ's girlfriend, Tammy. Some of that, but I mean, I don't know if anyone truly knows exactly what my dad went through, but
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
horrible.
If you've lost a sibling, trust me, I know exactly how you feel. I'm Maya. I'm the host of the Surviving Siblings podcast, but I'm also the founder of Surviving Siblings Support. I know that going through this experience is extremely difficult, whether you've lost a brother like me, a sister, or perhaps more than one sibling. Trust me, we know exactly how you feel. So that's why I started our Patreon account. You can click below to find out more about our Patreon. If you join our Patreon group, it'll give you just a little bit of extra support that you need along your journey as a bereaved sibling, or as we like to call it, a surviving sibling. We offer monthly support groups. We offer a free copy of our grief guide that is actually found on Amazon. It's called the Grief Guide for Surviving Siblings. We also offer direct messaging to our community and to me for extra support. And we have incredible events. We have workshops throughout the year that you'll get access to, and you'll also have access to our summit that happens annually. And so much more as you'll connect with a community of surviving siblings that understand the journey of losing a sibling. You can click below to join us today and also check out some additional VIP features that we offer. I hope to see you in the group, and until then, keep on surviving, my surviving siblings.
Well, of course. Yeah. So walk us through so your father found your brother. I'm sure lots of things transpired that, you're a 14-year-old, you're not really in the know about this. tell us when you found out. When did that happen for you, and who told you?
So I found out once somebody got to the accident to help. My dad was able to call my mom, and it was early in the morning. I wanna say it was like 3 AM in the morning, and I just heard her scream, and it woke me up, like, straight up out of bed, heard her scream, went to see what's wrong, and she just kept telling me that he was dead, and I didn't know who it was. I didn't know. I thought my brother was in his room. I thought she was talking about my dad. So I still didn't find out it was my brother until a little bit later because she couldn't calm down. But, yeah, I mean, that was very traumatic at 14, but a lot of family came over. It seemed like immediate. I know it was, like, maybe an hour or so later, but it seemed like immediate. They came over, I had some friends come over.
So eventually when she was able to articulate words, she explained that it was your brother.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're so young. 14 is so young, and that's so traumatic, and you're getting this call and your mother's upset, and I mean, it's a lot. And so what walk us through what happened next for you? Like, what transpired? Did you ever see your brother? Did you guys have a funeral, a celebration of life? What was next for you?
So we did have a funeral. It was a big funeral since he was in high school. Unfortunately, teenagers' funerals are so large. Um
Yes.
So, a very, very big funeral, and from what I remember going up to see him. I had a lot of friends just kinda stick by my side. A lot of people that I'm still friends with to this day. I mean, they just, you don't forget that when
No.
people just stick there with you, sit with you in that. I know it was just kind of a blur, honestly. It was all a blur. It was all things that came out in therapy years and years later because that was very traumatic, so.
Yeah, I find that, and I'm sure you've heard this on other episodes, and if you're someone who lost a sibling at a young age, this is very common, right? Like, you're kind of in shock, and this is probably your first experience with significant loss. And it just so happens to be a sibling, which is so intense because you think you have them for your life, like the majority of your life. And it's intense. So when you went to his funeral, and thank goodness for these wonderful friends, was that the first, like, did you guys have an open casket for him? Was that the first time that you saw him, like, physically?
Yes. Yes, we had an open casket, and it was the first time. I still really don't remember all of that, but I do remember that it was open casket, and they had done a really good job, so. But, yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a blur.
Yeah. As it is for, most people when they go through that, absolutely. Sudden loss, I feel like that happens too, right? There's just so much happening, your brain's not processing, it's like, what day is it? What's even happening, And it's interesting what you said too about a teenage funeral, or like, they're huge. Like, huge. I will never
Right.
forget, um, TJ was in a car accident. I'll never forget my senior year, a gal in school that was very, like, she was one of those girls that was, like, kind of eclectic, but she got along with everybody, so, like, every clique loved her, right? And so her family had moved. Interestingly enough, she was adopted as well, and her family had moved out of the school district, like, that last year. But of course, the school's like, "It's senior year, we're gonna let you come here." So she was driving quite far each day. She got tired one day and swerved, and a semi hit her.
Oh my god.
And when you said the large funeral, I mean, we were wrapped around
Like, the
I
whole
have chills.
school.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were all there, and I'll
Yeah.
never forget going and seeing her in the open casket. That's why I asked you that too, because it was like, I'm just giving myself chills right now. It was I had been to funerals before, but that was my senior year, much like your brother. It was his senior, I guess he was going into senior year, right? So it was like,
Yeah.
it was intense. So I
Yeah.
literally could visualize what you were talking about with the large crowd. I mean, we were wrapped around outside to go
Right.
see her.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a popular guy.
Yeah.
Like I said, he was kind of a class clown. He got along with everybody. Everybody liked him. Every weekend, he would go to the next town over, and we called it the Strip, and we called it cruising the Strip. And he would drive around all night every weekend. He was larger than life, honestly. Like, all of my friends, since we were so much younger, all of my friends remember just that he was so, like, larger than life, and, you know, they were all there too, because he never met a stranger, so he just talked to everyone, it didn't matter who it was, but yeah.
Yeah, mm, I know when you said that, I'm like, yeah, I mean, everybody like loved him. So of course they're gonna show up. And I'm sure it's shocking. It's like it's a moment, and I'm sure not only in your friends, which obviously they've always remembered him too, but just in the school, it's a moment. Like, I mean, here I am too. Like, how many years later, it's still sitting with me too, right? It's intense. Um, so we know it was a car accident, but what do you know about what happened, Erica? As far as the accident, were cops able to tell you eventually? How did that evolve for you guys? Because obviously he had passed, and I know when we had connected prior to, I read in there that n- you weren't really sure based on the information when he had passed or if he had completely. It was like a very
Right.
ambiguous situation for you guys. Yeah.
So, I did find out later that he had drank a few beers. His girlfriend says 1, but what we think happened was he swerved to miss a deer and he hit a tree. So he was so tall, he was 6'4",
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
and so his head was, you know, up at the roof. So they said that that's what it was, head trauma. So if he would have been short like me, I'm only 5'3", so
Me too, twin. Me too. Don't
yeah.
count us shorties out, right?
No. I know. I'm like, if only he would have been shorter.
I know. I know. I relate to that too. My brother wasn't 6'4", he was 6'1", but, I'm always like, yeah, little shorty over here. Don't count us shorties out.
Right.
Exactly.
We're feisty.
Um, yeah, we are. Don't mess with us. Absolutely. Yeah, oh gosh. So Tammy was with him at the party, but she wasn't in the car with him. So he was driving home, or what did she say to you about
So
this?
he had went They usually met at an old, like, they met at an old store, like one of those old, like, Midwestern, like, mom and pop shops.
Okay.
And it was in the middle kind of, because I would say she lived like 45 minutes away. So they would meet in the middle. And so he had taken her to her car and left. But he was only about 3 miles from home, which is a statistic that I learned later that is very normal. People are, within 3 to 5 miles from home a lot of times when they have an accident.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
That's
very common.
wild. Why is that? Do you know when you learned about that?
I don't re I know I read about it and I don't remember. I would have to look at it, which
Yeah.
my son was hit by a drunk driver last year, like a half a mile from my house. But I mean,
Okay.
he's fine. He's okay. And so was the driver, even though he went to jail. But yeah, so very close within, we live out in the country.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, I was only about 3 miles from here.
My gosh, that's wild. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh. Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know that, but I guess I have heard stories about like, I was just this close or it was just so yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I don't know. I guess there's a lot of theories. Like maybe you're an autopilot a little bit, maybe some type I don't know. Maybe it's just a thing. I don't know. Maybe because you're in close proximity to your house most of the time, I don't know. Be
right.
interesting to kind of think about. So, um, tell me a little bit about the fact that like okay, it's been 30 years. So, tell us a little bit about what it was like right afterwards for you because it sounds like you've done a lot. It's been like an evolution for you. Like you were 14, it felt like a blur. You had this support system of your friends. You're kind of from a small town and stuff. And like that was kind of what was going on then. So, did life go back to it never goes back to normal, right? We're forever changed. But like,
Right.
what was your life like? Like after the funeral ended, all of that, what was that like for you? Because you went in, middle school, ending middle school, going into high school. Do you think you kind of just put it to the side or was it impacting you, but maybe it wasn't the forefront? Like, tell us what that experience was like.
It's kind of interesting to think about I feel like kind of my life flipped upside down. And, I was always outgoing, had lots of friends, and that still happened, but I feel like I took on some of his characteristics, like, throughout, especially high school. So, in high school, I dealt with it mainly by being wild. Um, I drank a lot, and so it wasn't until I was probably, I would say my 30s, by the time it finally settled down and I was able to really deal with it because I never went to therapy. I only went to talk to a youth minister. Um, so I never actually went to real therapy until I was late 20s, early 30s. So that's when I finally was able to start dealing with it. So I feel like I made a lot of bad life choices and bad life decisions in between the ages of 14 and 30 something just from unresolved trauma. So I have taken a lot of training on trauma informed care, as I said, when we talked previously. And I just feel like that has helped. My career path as a social worker has really helped. And I've just now I'm to this point where I feel like, yes, it is still definitely there, but it's much easier to talk about it.
I love this. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into this. Yeah, this is amazing. And I think it's so common, Erica. I'm sure you see this in your line of work all the time that, especially when you deal with a loss, whether you're a very young child or you're a teenager like you, it's too much, I think, for our brain to really process for anyone. But when you're at that kind of age and you're developing and like, oh my God, it's not, all your friends are doing other stuff and life continues, like, you wanna continue on with them. You don't wanna, like, make space for this, and it's not because you're not sad, but you're gonna turn to other things. I mean, I get it. I had a different type of trauma, but in high school, and I was a wild child, so I get it. I did it too, girl. I'm there with you.
Yeah.
But, what was the turning point for you? What do you think it was when you said, like, when your 30s is when things kind of hit for you and that's when you went to therapy, and like, what do you think it was? Was it just you felt an awakening, or was there like a moment or something that happened in your life that you felt, I need to go to therapy, like, I this is unresolved? Was there like a turning point for you?
I don't think there was any one specific turning point. After I had been divorced twice and I had 2 boys of my own, just knowing that, I had to be healed in order to raise, healthy, emotionally healthy boys. So that was really important. And just, talking to a therapist and talking through it and doing the work just so I could be there for my kids and be present and not be dealing with all this still. And people would be like, oh, it's been so long. But that was always the thing, first, it was like, oh, it's been 5 years. You should be over it now. That kind of stuff never helps. I think that only makes it worse when you have somebody that's supposed to care about you keep saying stuff like that. And so I feel like everyone deals with it in their time, but I therapy is super important. I think if I would have got the right help back when I was 14, it would have been a lot better.
Probably would have been a game changer for you. I mean,
Right.
that's why when people ask me all the time, they're like, what advice do you have? And I'm like, look, I'm no therapist, but I'll tell you this. Go to therapy and find a community of people that get you. For the two things that you just commented on, Erica, right?
Yes.
You
Yes.
want people to not be telling you, why aren't it's been 5 years. Like, why are we still talking about this? Well, of course, especially you, Erica, of course you're still talking about it because you never processed it.
Right.
How did you find this is the thing that comes up a lot. How did you find the right therapist? How did you find the right person to work with? Because I feel like that's a question I get asked a lot as well. And I think it's great to hear this from people like you come on the show because everybody's going to have a different story. And I have, of course, my opinions on it and like how you can find it. But I think it's better to hear from you guys. Like, how did you find the right therapist for you?
So something I've learned in my career is just I tell everyone, finding the right therapist is important, not just going to therapy, but you have to match with the correct therapist. If you don't click with them after like 1 or 2, 3 sessions, go to a different one. Keep going to a different one until you click with one. You'll know in therapy when you click, when it's so easy for you to talk about what's bothering you.
Yeah. I think that
So
yeah, I think that's good advice.
I found the perfect therapist, and she helped me through so much. I mean, but I just knew as soon as I talked to her, I just knew, like, this is the right person to talk to, and it just flowed out, you know?
For me, like, I tell people it's kind of like dating, right? I think it's interesting that people think like, "Okay, like, I found this therapist, they take my insurance, I'm just gonna go," and then they're like, "We don't click at all." And I'm like, "You don't have to go back." Like, and the other I will use this analogy sometimes, I'll say, you know, it's wonderful if you marry your high school sweetheart, like your first boyfriend or your first girlfriend or whatever, but, like, how many people do that? Some people, but
Right.
not everybody. So, like, what makes you think the first date you go on is gonna be your forever? Kinda like therapy, if you're going, like,
Yeah.
you're gonna be telling this person such intimate stuff. Well, if you're
Right.
doing it right.
Right, right. If it works, yeah. Yeah, it is a lot like dating. That's a good analogy.
Yeah. I can't claim that myself, but another therapist, actually, who's been on the show as well, she kind of taught me that, and I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm taking that forever." That's awesome, so I'll always give her credit. Shout out to Dawn on that, but yeah, it just that really resonated with me, so I think that's great advice. So how did you get into social work? It sounds like your whole life kind of, you went through 2 divorces, you have 2 boys, like, it sounds like you went through a lot, and then you're like, "I really gotta dive into some of this trauma," and obviously a lot of it is, losing TJ and going through all of this with your family, but how did you get into social work? Like, how did that evolve?
So I feel like before there's the before and the after, and before there were a lot of things that I wanted to do that it just kind of changed. And even I feel like through high school I didn't really have any goals, honestly. I didn't have a whole lot of anything in high school, but when I went to college, I wanted to be a marine biologist, but it slowly came around to criminal justice, social work. So I started working with the juvenile justice system when I was pretty young. I mean, I wasn't very much older than them when I was working with them. I was 24, and it just kind of went from there. So I worked at a juvenile detention facility, and then I was a child welfare worker, and then a juvenile probation officer, and now I'm just a case manager for a company. So
Yeah. Do you feel like I mean, it evolved for you, but do you feel like some of this was inspired from you and TJ's past too, from, like, your upbringing, from him, maybe from both of you being adopted? Like, do you think some of like, you can probably connect, right, on a deeper level?
yes, all of the above. I feel like all of it kinda just came together and got me into social work, and I just, I wanted to give back and I wanted to help out. It just kinda clicked, and I love it.
Yeah, that's kind of it's like a part of you and a part of this legacy. So, with it being 30 years, coming up on 31, Erica, tell us a little bit about where you are today and like how do you honor TJ today? I mean, obviously through your work. I mean, that's very evident. But tell us a little bit about that and then also I'm curious too as kind of a second part of this question, you and TJ both being adopted, has that ever come into play in all of this as well? Like, have you met your actual biological family? What about TJ's biological family? Has that evolved in your story too? Because I know a lot of our siblings who are adopted are always curious how that story continues to evolve as well after a loss.
So, with 30 years last year, we decided to have a celebration, but then we weren't able to have it. So, we might have it this year. Um, but his girlfriend, she lives about 2.5 hours away. But she came over and I just got to hang out with her all day. We went to his graveside and we just we sat there and talked forever. it was just really good to catch up with her. I mean, I stay in contact with her on social media and I have her phone number, but I don't talk to her all the time. So it was just really good to catch up with her and we just talked about old memories, looked at old pictures. I don't know if have you seen the QR codes that you can put on headstones?
No, I have not. Tell us about this. What is this?
So, like, they're called, like, memory keepers, and you
Okay.
can have this QR code put on a headstone, and then when people come to visit, they can click that QR code, and it takes them to a website. So I actually have, like, a memorial website that I made. I gave that QR code to my parents for Mother and Father's Day last year, and they put it on his headstone. I keep up with the website, but that was really cool. So we're just, just kinda going from there. The adoption, I don't know his family, his birth family. I don't think my parents do either, and it's kinda something that was just it was just kinda something that was left alone just because, maybe just let them if they don't know, if they're not in the community and they don't know, then, there's no reason to tell them. I have met my birth family, so I've met almost everyone. I speak with them and have a relationship with them.
And how was that for you on this whole journey? Has that been healing for you? Was that challenging? How was that?
That was really challenging, and that just happened in 2019,
Oh, wow.
so super recent because Indiana had closed adoptions, and they just opened back up in 2018, so I got to meet them in 2019. And then I had to do a DNA test to meet my birth father, but I met him and he didn't know I existed. They're all pretty cool. It's one of those stories, it's not you hear all the horror stories about adoptees and rejection, and I definitely was blessed that mine was not that way. They were all very welcoming, they were all very kind, so it was a good story.
Yeah. Yeah. Difficult to go through, but you're glad you did it and you've got this connection with them. Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of the last step, I feel, in my healing, so, yeah, I feel like it all kinda came together.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got quite a journey here, Erica. Like there's just so much to unpack. I'm like, we could do like multiple episodes with you about like all the things you've gone through. It's a lot. But um so tell us a little bit about you'll have to share the memorial website with us too, so we can put it in the show notes so you guys can
Yeah.
check out if you're comfortable with that. And we'll link it here because if you're keeping up with the website for TJ, we definitely want to see that. I mean,
Yeah, there's a bunch of pictures on it, yeah.
that's perfect. Okay, yeah, we'll put it so you guys can check that out in the show notes. So tell us a little bit about where, your dad was such an integral part of the story. Like, tell us where your parents are today and like how your dynamic with them is as well. Because I think this is interesting, right? Because you're adopted, TJ's adopted, right? How is your relationship with them? How has that evolved through all of this healing and through 30 years after the loss of TJ? I think that's probably been. I mean, your dad doesn't talk about it much. Does your mom talk about it? Do you guys have different, experiences in how you express your grief? What does that look like?
I think we definitely all had different experiences, but I mean, I think it made us closer. I know a lot of people sometimes fall apart, but we were just a lot closer. I mean, my parents were my best friends. I built a house right next to them, so
Did you
I
really?
live, like, right
Wow.
next door to them. So, yeah, they're you know, ooh, talk about my parents gets me all choked up, but, they've been married for what this year it'll be 55 years? Yeah, they've been married for 55 years, so they made it through all of that.
And a lot don't.
Right. They're the strongest people I know.
Yeah. I think that's great. So this is the thing, Erica. Most of the episodes that we do, it does not bring the family closer together. There's some. There was one episode I did really early on in the show. I think it was the first season. I was interviewing people. And there is a woman, her name is Margaret, and she does like this good grief stuff in Australia. She's very cool. And she talked about something called the grief bubble. I didn't have a clue what she was talking about because I was like, my family became even more dysfunctional and like not connected after the loss of my brother. But she was talking about it where, like, when everyone leaves after the funeral and, like, when, extended family, friends start to go, it's when the core family unit kind of is in this bubble together. And I wonder if did you experience that a little bit with your parents? Like, were you guys kind of hung together, or, was that a part of making you guys feel close or more connected? Or I don't know, what was your experience?
I think just the 3 of us having only each other, I mean, that kept us close together. My parents, I think I kept them going just, at the age I was at, they just felt like they couldn't stop, and they did go to, like, grief support groups. They went to the Compassionate Friends Network, um,
Wow.
so they really put in I know they put in some work, you know, they had to work really hard to just be there. So, yeah, I think they did a really good job.
Yeah. Clearly, you built a house next to them. So clearly, and I always say that too. I've never really found anybody that says anything in between where they're just like, oh, yeah, we're just, no. It's either like it really brings you together or it really highlights a lot of dysfunction or can really tear your family apart. It's really wonderful to hear that part of your story, that here you are 30 years later, almost 31 years later, and you guys have this bond. So your dad has made a few words. He doesn't want to talk about it much. Does your mom talk about it, TJ, often, or what was her kind of style of grieving?
She'll talk about memories. I mean, she'll talk about him. So, my dad really just doesn't say a whole lot. He just doesn't say a whole lot anyways. If he does say something, we all listen because, usually it's very wise. But my mom, I mean, she will talk about a lot of memories and stuff, but it's all just happy memories, which, I mean, most of it is happy. Of course, we were both teenagers, so I'm sure, like, not all the memories are happy, but that's all that we remember are just the happy memories, which is good. We just
Yeah.
forget the bad stuff that didn't really matter anyway with all the teenage angst and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what does it matter now? That's how I look at it. Right. And
Uh,
I'm decades behind you. I'm only 10 years into this. So, and that's how I look at it. Sometimes when people ask me that question too, I'm like, I just remember the good stuff. And like, of course, you know that some of the bad stuff happened for sure, but it's like, it's not important. Why talk about it? It's not a big deal.
right,
So
right,
it's insightful, someone like yourself who has been going on this journey for a long time can attest to the fact that it's just not that important.
right.
Anything else that you want to share about TJ that I didn't ask you about, Erica? Anything else you want to share with us?
Hmm. There's so much. He was just a wild country boy and he had the biggest smile. And if anyone looks at the memorial site that I have, I mean, you'll see in his pictures his ginormous smile, and that's how everyone remembered him. That was his trademark. And he always looked like he was up to something.
Yeah, that's cute. We'll definitely have to add the site in here. So like, yeah. Um, I'm curious too, like for some people that have lost a sibling a certain way, like did that leave kind of a fear in you at all about like driving or anything like that? I forgot to ask you that earlier. Were you ever anxious about that? Because that's something that's come up for other siblings, and I was curious in your situation.
I was not scared to drive myself. I'm sure my parents were absolutely terrified, but to their credit, they never showed it. Like, which as a mom of teenagers, how did they do that? I've said that to my friends before. I said, "How in the world did my parents let me drive?" Because as a sibling who lost, someone in a car accident, it's terrifying.
Mhm.
But I have now had to let both of my kids drive.
Oh my
My youngest
gosh.
just got his permit, so
Oh my god. Well, and that leads me to my next question then, like, how are you dealing with that? I mean, it's interesting too because 'cause you're talking about, like, this hindsight now that and this kind of awe that you have for your parents. I mean, I agree with you. I can't imagine how nerve-wracking that must have been, which is why I asked the question to you, right? But then also for your parents. But how do you feel like each time that both of your kids now are driving, like, did you feel some anxiety? Do you feel like the whole loss of TJ kind of came back up for you? These are these secondary things, right, that come back up. Did it come up for you?
The fear definitely did. I think, in 2026, we're lucky that we have Life 360.
God. Yes.
And I don't feel like I abuse that with my kids. I feel like I use it just to make sure they're getting from point A to point B safely. My parents didn't have that. So yeah, I mean, just it would give me major anxiety if I would have had to do that 2 years after the fact of my losing my other child in a car accident. Just thinking about that is wild.
Yeah. Yeah. Kudos to them. You have
And
great parents, right? You have great parents. So, what advice do you have for people, Erica? And this can just be anything in your grief space, anything you want to reflect on TJ's loss. But there's a lot of people that listen to our show that it's day one for them, right? It might be hour one for them. It might be week one for them. And maybe it's only a few years for them. But, with a couple decades, I feel like we learn so much through this grief experience, and you have evolved so much through it. What advice do you have for people that are, early in this loss?
I mean, I my advice is just to, deal with your grief in the way that makes you the most comfortable. I think it's so unique to each person and everyone's experience is so different. I mean, I think therapy is vital and that most people should definitely go, but I just think that dealing with it in your very own way because no one's going to be able to tell you exactly what you're going to be feeling. No one's going to feel like I felt or like you felt. So that's my only advice. And when I've had friends that have lost people, I mean, if you're someone trying to support someone grieving, just sit with them, you know, be there if they need it. I mean, that's the main thing that I think I just learned because I had people sit with me and I didn't have like all the noise, they didn't talk, and they were only 13 and 14 years old. So that was I mean, that's some pretty like evolved teenagers there.
Yes.
They just sat with me, they stayed with me, anything I needed. So, yeah. I mean that I think that taught me so much. So, I mean, my friends taught me a lot back then too. So, I always say I had the best friends. I mean, I don't know if I could have made it without them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head because I went through the same thing as an adult. And what drove me crazy was the people that just wanted me, like, I didn't have the capacity to talk, to your point, right? And so it was the people that would just, but I also didn't want to be alone.
Mhm.
Because that's when the dark things come in, right? Or like, you're just like, and
Right.
you also just like, you're in this fatigue where sometimes you can't even make a decision. Like, do I need to go to the bathroom or do I need a cup of water? So having those people that will just sit next to you and ask you if you need something, and that's it. And like, it's the presence of just not being alone that is wild. I think we can learn a lot from kids too. I say this a lot in other
Yeah.
arenas of life. I'm like, I think we can learn a lot because life is a little bit purer at that point. I think it's interesting that your friends just kind of sat with you and because that's what helped me at 30. So like, I mean, you guys had it cracking at 13 and 14. You already
Right.
knew, right? I think that's
Yeah.
really impressive. I agree with you. I think we overcomplicate it a lot, right? By asking too many questions and, we just I think you also said something really important too where you mentioned that we all grieve differently. A lot of people will ask me, Erica, they'll say, "Oh, well, I don't feel like how do I grieve?" That's my one of my favorite ones I get. How do I grieve? I don't think I've grieved. And I'm like, "Why do you think that?" I'm like, "Why do you think that?" So the thing is, I think they're just thinking it's going to look like a movie, right? Or if they're not bawling their eyes out every day, or if they're not. And I really love what you said about just allow yourself to grieve in your own way. Like some people just become very withdrawn. Some people want to talk about it. Some people, um, any advice to people from you, Erica, about people that are kind of being judgmental of themselves and how they're grieving? Any advice that you would give them?
That's so hard because I feel like they're just looking at other people too much. Like you said, like, it's not a movie, it's not a TV show. And maybe if they feel like they haven't grieved, then maybe they haven't. So they could be in shock still. They could just, disassociate with it. And that would be a pretty big sign to go talk to somebody. I mean, whether it's a friend, whether it's family, whether it's a therapist, just talk to somebody about it at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you completely. Erica, thank you for sharing TJ with us. And
Thank you.
I am really looking forward to seeing the memorial site and sharing that with you guys in the show notes. It'll be down there. Erica, let people know where you feel comfortable because, some people like to reach out when your story connects with them, especially those who have lost a sibling to a car accident. They'll definitely connect with your story. So, Erica, if you feel comfortable, people can reach out to you via email, I believe you said. So, what's the best email for you?
It is ERICABOHN52 @gmail.com.
Easy breezy. Perfect. And we'll put it in the show notes as well. Erica, thank you so much.
Thank you, Maya.
Thank you so much for listening to the Surviving Siblings podcast. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did creating it for you, then share it on your chosen social media platform. And don't forget to tag us at Surviving Siblings Podcast so that more surviving siblings can find us. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. And don't forget to follow us on all social media platforms. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Surviving Siblings Podcast. All links can be found in the show notes, so be sure to check those out too. Thank you again for the support. Until the next episode, keep on surviving, my surviving siblings.